Amador County's local television network, TSPN. And now back to a TSPN outreach presentation. Operation CARES, Response to Sexual Assault on TSPN.
Hi, we're back with our segment on how to respond to sexual assault. And this is Sergeant Mike Rice from the Amador County Sheriff's Department. And we just went over quite a few questions having to do with the sensitivity of this subject. We're going to go ahead and continue. Okay, Mike, is there a typical reaction from a victim of sexual assault?
There really is not. There is no typical reaction because every person is different and they will deal with things in a different way. Okay. And so I've seen a wide range in investigating these. I've seen victims that are sort of stoic and emotionless when it comes to dealing with this. Okay. I've also had victims who are trying to laugh in order to lighten the mood.
Sure.
So there isn't a typical reaction. There isn't a wrong way for a person to react, or a person's reaction to something like this doesn't necessarily negate the fact that something happened to them.
Okay. Does sexual assault always result in visible injuries?
Not at all. Mm-hmm. Not at all. It depends on the person, the nature of the act, what the crime was. Sometimes they will result in visible injuries to the victims. Other times you can have a victim who's reporting it who is uninjured or doesn't have any visible injuries.
Do you see one more than the other?
Again, it depends on the proximity to the actual assault itself. Okay. If we get an event that's reported and it was a fairly violent act and it's closely reported to the time that it occurred, then we should expect to see some signs of visible injuries or things like that. But again, we have them reported from close to the event all the way up to 20 years after the fact.
You mentioned that earlier. You mentioned that sometimes an assault isn't reported for many, many years. And I'm just out of curiosity, I'm wondering, really the nature of an assault is so extensive. I could see how a victim is so wounded, I could see how they would wait for many, many years just because of the embarrassment and the shame that's involved. I'm wondering, out of curiosity, if you have seen any type of pattern that the reason people do wait maybe is because they know that perpetrator has, again, assaulted other victims.
Sometimes that is a catalyst, and you'll see a victim who was victimized quite some time ago, and then they'll notice that the perpetrator has selected another victim or is victimizing someone else, and then they'll come forward and report. Yeah. So sure, that does happen. Okay.
All right. If a victim forgets details about an assault, and I would like to think, this specifically could be pertaining to victims that are young, to children. If a victim forgets details about an assault, do you adjust interview questions or use other techniques to help the victim remember? And can you provide an example?
Sure. Victims commonly want to block. These are violent acts, and victims typically want to block information out of their heads in order to help them deal with or process what's happening with them. So they will block details and things out of their mind that are hurtful to them. So we do have interview techniques that we can use to sort of draw those memories or thoughts back up to where they can verbalize them and we can do it. One of them is called cognitive interviewing. Okay. And that is an interview process in which we speak with the victim and we employ other senses rather than just cite what did you see. Okay. We can employ senses that can trigger a thought process or trigger a reaction or a memory. Okay. Correct. So we can ask auditory questions. Did you hear something going on? What did the room smell like? This can trigger a memory to come back.
Absolutely. I imagine those situations for you guys investigating could be really intense and even emotional and I mean, I'm sure you guys have to, keep composure and everything. The nature of the situation is it's heavy.
Yes, the nature of the situation is very heavy, but we respond in a professional manner, and we do our best to come to some sort of resolution when these cases pop up.
Okay, let's move on. What steps are taken if a victim's culture prohibits certain medical or investigative procedures?
We're sensitive to other people's cultures or other cultures, and we understand that there are some cultures which don't allow certain procedures to take place, and we do our best to navigate around those.
Okay.
And still work out the situation or obtain the evidence or statements that we need. So
Okay.
we'll have to adapt to those situations
Sure.
when they present themselves, and we do our best to work around those sorts of things.
Okay. What happens if a victim doesn't speak English? Do you have access to an interpreter?
Yes, the sheriff's office has always had access to the services of interpreters for as
Okay.
long as I've worked there.
Yeah.
We've had those sort of services, so that's really not even a barrier for us.
Mike, how long have you worked here in the county?
I've worked for the county for 13 years now.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So you have access to an interpreter. A language barrier is not a problem.
It's really not a problem at all. We have access to interpreter services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, fantastic. What steps are taken if a victim of sexual assault has special needs, physically, mentally, or handicapped needs?
Well, tragically, we do see that come up because of the nature of their condition.
Yeah.
They're susceptible to victimization.
Yeah.
So we do see that come up, and there are services and techniques that we can use to work
Okay.
around those types of disabilities or special needs.
Okay. When do you call for advocate assistance, and how often do you call? And I'm assuming that this question could be pertaining exactly to Operation Care and their representatives, them being advocates,
When
working with you.
Yeah, when a sex
Okay.
assault occurs, we're actually required by law to offer the victims advocate services.
Okay.
So every time we have something reported like this, we offer the victim the services of an advocate. And we
Okay.
go into depth and explain what an advocate can do, what their role is in the situation, and what services that they can provide for them.
Okay, so do you find that you guys work fairly closely together, the Sheriff's Department and Operation Care?
Oh, absolutely, especially when it comes to sexual assault. We work hand in hand with Operation Care and
Awesome.
do our best to work together, because the bottom line at the end of the day, you want the victim to have the best services possible.
Okay, wow. All right, let's move on. We have a couple more questions here. Are law enforcement officers mandated to report to the appropriate agencies regardless of the victim's cooperation?
Law enforcement is what we call a mandated reporter when it comes to the victimization of children especially.
Okay.
We are required to report those events to Child Protective Services.
Okay.
So they too can intercede and provide the services that they are supposed to provide for the victims of sexual assault.
Okay, this question is not on our list, but
Okay,
just
perfect.
talking about it, that last question is making me wonder, who else would be a mandated reporter?
Well, there's a number of categories of mandated reporters.
Okay.
Teachers, for example,
Okay.
are mandated to
Absolutely.
report sexual abuse. People employed in the medical professions, so nurses, doctors, things of that nature.
Okay.
Or just to name a few of people who are mandated to report
Okay.
either physical, sexual, or mental abuse of children.
What about just the general public? Because I've heard this topic come up before, and that is that somebody may know that a victim has been assaulted, and they don't know what to do. They don't know if they're trying to use wisdom, I think, trying to decide, okay, am I going to upset the victim and the family, even knowing that it's what's best for the victim, for it to be reported. But I think in the general public, a lot of times people don't totally know if they should say something, or the ramifications of the situation if they do say something. What would you, from a law enforcement perspective, say, hey, listen, if you know of a victim that has been assaulted, this is what you need to do, and you need to do it in this timely manner?
Yeah, and we can't set out a hard and fast rule and say that every time you should do this, but if someone has been victimized, we want to know about it.
Yeah.
We want to take care of that victim, and we want to provide them with the best services that we possibly can so they can get some resolution for this or get help dealing with the situation. And if a victim doesn't want our assistance, then they can tell us that, hey, I'm dealing with this in another way. And we're still there for them to take care of their needs or meet whatever needs to make the outcome as best we possibly can.
Okay. Do you see that very often, where a victim says, you know what, I really don't want your help?
It happens. We do see that. It's not totally common. Generally, once the situation has been exposed, it's the cards go out on the table, and there really isn't too much reluctance. But occasionally, we do see that.
Okay. Let's go back to a few of these questions. We have a little more time, so let's elaborate a little bit. As far as steps that are taken, if a victim's culture prohibits certain medical investigative procedures, you know, we're a small county. We don't have, you know, we're not too culturally diverse. We're getting there, which I love. But I'm curious, what cultures do present some restrictions?
Well, I believe the culture that comes to mind for me when we speak of sexual assault and prohibiting certain practices would be the Muslim culture.
Okay.
And they have very set guidelines about male and female interactions, especially when one is married.
Sure.
So that's the situation that comes to mind for me right off the top of the bat. And we'll do our best to navigate around those situations and come up with something that's sensitive to their cultural needs.
Okay, perfect. Mike, you guys play such a integral role here in the job that you do, and it's fantastic that you're working together with Operation Care, and just wonderful. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We're going to go to a break, and we'll come back and we'll have some more questions with Desi and Anna and close this up.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.